If I had $1 for every time someone told me just be yourself, I could probably buy my own island by now.
Oh, for sure.
It's the most common advice in the world, and honestly, it's the
Yeah.
most frustrating. It's like telling someone who's drowning, hey, just swim.
It really is, because it sounds so simple, right? Just be yourself.
Yeah.
As if yourself is this, static thing you can just pick up off a shelf.
Right.
But then you try to do it in a job interview or on a first date, and
Yeah.
it feels impossible. You just freeze because you
Mhm.
realize you don't even know which version of you is the real one.
Exactly. I end up cycling through like 3 different personalities in my head
Right.
and then just sort of stare.
Uh-huh.
So today we're doing a deep dive into a text that just completely flips that advice on its head. It's called How to Be Oneself Without Being Someone Else. And the reason I wanted to get into this is that it stops treating authenticity as something you have to, build.
Yeah, it treats it more like an excavation project.
Excavation, that's a perfect word.
And that's the core idea that got me hooked. Being yourself isn't about adding things. It's not about trying to be funnier or more confident. It's all about subtraction.
Subtraction. See, that feels so counterintuitive. Our first instinct when we feel insecure is to add stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely. We think, oh, I need to be smarter or I need to be more chill. We just layer things on top.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where we go wrong. The text argues that most of us are walking around covered in these layers that feel like our identity, but they're not. It calls us the not self.
The not self.
Yeah, and it lists what that is. It's expectations from other people, borrowed beliefs, survival strategies.
Survival strategies. Wow. That's a heavy way to describe a personality trait.
It is. It implies that the fake parts of us aren't there because we're malicious. They're there because they, at some point, helped us survive.
They served a purpose.
Precisely. And that's why the text says you have to start with self-compassion. Maybe you became the funny one or the quiet one because that behavior got you through a tough time as a kid. It got you praise or it, minimized conflict.
Okay.
But the problem is that those layers, those survival rules, they eventually harden. They become armor.
So we're walking around in a suit of armor we built when we were 12, but now we're 30 and it's too small.
It's even worse than that. After a while, you forget you're even wearing the armor. You start to think the armor is your skin.
That is a terrifying thought.
You confuse the safety mechanism with your soul.
That I might think I'm being me, but I'm actually just running my defense mechanisms. So the mission here is to figure out how to take the armor off.
That's the goal.
But I have to ask, isn't taking it off dangerous? If it's there for safety, what happens when it's gone?
That's the big fear, isn't it? That underneath there's nothing or something weak. But the text says the opposite. It says the armor is heavy. It's exhausting. If you've ever left a party and just felt completely drained, not because of what you did, but because of who you had to be, that's the weight of the armor.
The social hangover, even when you weren't drinking. I can relate to that.
Exactly. So this is about energy conservation as much as it is about truth.
Okay, let's get into the practical steps. Step 1 is notice imitation, but it's not just about, copying someone's style.
No, it's way more subtle. The text asks this really uncomfortable question. Where do you change your tone, posture, opinions, or values to avoid rejection?
To avoid rejection, that's the key.
That's the metric. Are you performing competence? Are you performing softness or indifference?
Performing indifference feels like a direct call out to the entire modern dating scene. Wait 3 hours to text back, act like you don't care.
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic defense. If I pretend I don't care, then rejection can't touch me. But the text makes this crucial distinction. Performance is not authenticity. If you're curating a version of yourself just so you don't get rejected, that's a layer. That's distortion.
So see, I catch myself doing it. I'm in a meeting. I realize my voice is a little higher. I'm being super agreeable because I'm intimidated by my boss. What do I actually do? That impulse is so fast.
And that speed is what the second step is all about. Slow down response time.
Okay.
That reaction is biological. Your nervous system feels a threat, social rejection, and you just reflexively adapt. It's like a fawn response.
It's a reflex,
Yeah.
like catching a glass before it hits the floor.
Exactly. You're adapting instead of choosing. You're reading the room and matching its energy before you've even checked in with yourself.
So the tool is to just pause. In a high-stakes meeting, pausing for 10 seconds is going to look weird.
It doesn't have to be 10 seconds of silence. It can be a micro pause, taking a breath, or just saying, let me think about that for a second. The point of the pause is to disrupt that loop. You create a tiny gap between their expectation and your response. And in that gap, you ask yourself, what do I actually think or feel?
But that's the scary part. Because sometimes the answer is something you know they really don't want to hear.
And that is why this whole thing is hard. The pause breaks the people-pleasing circuit. It forces you to see the gap between what's expected and what's true for you.
This leads right into the third concept, separating desire from influence. It talks about external referencing versus internal referencing. Can you break that down for us?
Sure, think of it like a ship. External referencing is navigating by watching all the other ships. If they turn left, you turn left.
You just follow the fleet.
Right. You assume they know where they're going. Internal referencing is navigating by a compass inside your own ship. You check your own dial, not the other boats.
But how do we find that compass? We live in a world that is just screaming at us to look at the other boats. Social media is an external referencing machine.
It is. So the text suggests what it calls a solitude test. It asks, what do you want when no one is watching? What do you choose when there's no audience?
That's a tough question. It feels like there's always an audience now. Even when we're alone, we're thinking about how we'll post about it.
Which is why so many people feel like they're just drifting. The source argues that external referencing creates drift. You wake up 5 years later in a job you never really chose.
You just ended up there.
You ended up there. Internal referencing restores your direction, but you have to be willing to disconnect from that imaginary audience to find it.
Okay, so let's play this out. I start using my internal compass. I stop performing. I stop laughing at jokes I don't think are funny. People are going to get annoyed.
But they absolutely will be. And that brings us to the fourth point, and honestly, this is the toughest one. This is where most people give up. You have to tolerate disapproval.
Yeah, I saw this part. It says, authenticity is stability without applause. Which, I mean, it sounds good on a poster, but in real life, being disliked is physically painful.
It is. Evolutionarily, rejection from the tribe meant death. But the text is very firm here. It says, and this is almost a direct quote, if being yourself collapses under criticism, then approval was your anchor all along.
Oof, that's a gut punch.
It is. It means if you can only be you when everyone is clapping, then you aren't really being you. You're just performing a popular version of yourself.
You're still performing.
True authenticity is the ability to stand firm even when the room goes cold.
That completely redefines it. We think of authenticity as this warm, fuzzy, sharing my truth moment. But this is saying it's actually grit. It's the strength to be disliked.
It's an endurance sport, not a beauty pageant. And the text notes that when you stop performing, the people who benefited from your performance, they'll be the first to complain.
You've changed.
Exactly. You've changed, and you have to be able to hear that and not just crumble.
That is a massive ask. But okay, let's say we're brave enough to try it. We're pausing, we're checking our compass, we're tolerating disapproval. Does that mean we have to have this rigid, fixed idea of who we are? Like write a manifesto?
Surprisingly, no. And this is where the text gets really nuanced. It specifically warns against the modern obsession with personal branding.
Okay, hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here. We live in a LinkedIn world. Don't we need a personal brand to survive?
Well, there's a difference between a professional reputation, which is useful, and confusing that brand with your soul. The text says you are not a brand, you are not a fixed archetype. It argues that a rigid identity is just another defense. If you say, I'm the rebel, or I'm the intellectual, and you refuse to step outside those lines, that's just another costume.
So the rebel who rejects everything is just as trapped as the people pleaser who accepts everything.
Exactly. They are both just reacting to the external world. One complies, one resists, but neither is actually free. Being yourself means allowing for growth, for change, for nuance.
For inconsistency even.
Even inconsistency. You're allowed to contradict yourself. You're allowed to change your mind.
That feels freeing, but also chaotic. If I'm not a fixed personality, how do I know if I'm actually on track? What's the metric?
The metric isn't a label, it's energy, which is the sixth point, the somatic audit.
The somatic audit. Sounds very clinical.
It's simpler than it sounds. You just pay attention to your energy levels. Where do you feel drained after an interaction? Where do you feel steady?
Right.
The text has a simple equation. Being someone else costs energy. Being yourself stabilizes it.
Can we unpack that? Why does pretending to be interested in something burn actual energy?
Because of the cognitive load. Think about it. When you're performing, you're running a split screen in your brain. Half of your brain is having the conversation. The other half is monitoring the conversation.
Was that funny? Did they like that story? Am I talking too much?
Yes. That monitoring process burns glucose. It is physically exhausting.
That makes so much sense. That's
Yeah.
why you can leave a 2-hour meeting feeling like you just ran a marathon.
Exactly. Authenticity is efficient. You shut down the monitor, you're just there.
Right.
No split screen.
This connects right to the next point about the internal narrator.
It does. Step 7, stop narrating yourself. We have this constant running commentary on our own lives while we're living them. The text says this fractures your presence.
I am so guilty of this. I'll be in the middle of telling a joke and part of my brain is already grading the delivery. B+ could have timed that better.
Right. And that grading creates distance. The shift the text suggests is to change the internal question. Instead of asking, am I doing this right? Which implies a performance, you ask, am I aligned?
Am I aligned? That feels like a physical question.
It is, which leads to the final practical tool. Let your body speak. The text claims the body knows about misalignment long before the mind does.
It lists the signs, right? A tight throat, shallow breathing.
Clenched jaw, restless movement, these aren't random. A tight throat is literally you swallowing your own words. A clenched jaw is unexpressed resistance.
So if I'm saying yes to something, but my stomach is in knots.
Your body is screaming no.
Yeah.
The mind can rationalize anything. It can say, well, I should go to this party for networking. But your body knows the truth. The real signal for authenticity is just relaxation.
Not happiness necessarily, but just a lack of tension.
A lack of tension. A dropping of the shoulders. When you're aligned, you don't need to brace yourself against your own life.
We've covered so much here, from the armor to the clenched jaw. But I want to touch on the synthesis at the end. Because if we do all this, do we just become selfish jerks?
That's the fear, isn't it? That authenticity is just a fancy word for narcissism.
Yeah.
But the text is really nuanced. It says you can't escape influence. We're social animals. We're shaped by our culture, our friends, our family.
So the goal isn't total isolation.
No. The goal is choosing what you integrate. I love this quote from it. You are shaped by experience, but you are not required to repeat it.
Shaped by experience, but not required to repeat it. That's powerful.
Mm.
Just because I learned a survival tactic as a kid doesn't mean I have to keep using it as an adult.
Precisely. It's about conscious integration versus blind imitation.
Yeah.
And the end result isn't some loud, rebellious, this is me, take it or leave it attitude.
Yeah, that's the stereotype. The person standing on a table shouting, "This is my truth."
The text says real authenticity is the opposite. It's not loud. It's not defensive. It is quiet consistency.
Quiet consistency.
And coherence. It means when you're truly yourself, you don't need to prove it. You don't need to broadcast it. You just remain in it.
It's the difference between trying to convince someone you're confident and just being comfortable in your own skin.
Yes. If you have to prove it, it's a performance. If you're just living it, that's authenticity.
It's funny, we started by saying just be yourself is terrible advice, but maybe the advice should be just stop being who you aren't.
That's it, exactly. It's a process of elimination. Trusting that if you chip away all the marble that isn't the statue is already there. You just have to uncover it.
That takes so much pressure off. You don't have
Yeah.
to become someone new.
Yeah.
You just have to let go of the parts that were never you to begin with.
Exactly.
This has been incredibly clarifying. We've gone from seeing identity as a performance to seeing it as a home we have to return to.
It really changes the goal. It's not about being the most impressive person in the room. It's about being the most aligned person in your own body.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought from this that really struck me. The text says you do not need to prove your authenticity. You need to remain in it.
It's a powerful distinction.
So here is the question for you to take with you. If you feel that need to prove who you are to the people around you, to explain or justify or perform your identity, ask yourself this: are you seeking connection or are you seeking permission?
That's the whole question.
Because if you're seeking permission to be yourself, you've given your anchor to someone else. Take the anchor back. Thanks for diving in with us.
See you next time.